This is she's 17 years old.
17 years. Goodness, Maybell. In human years, well, I wonder how old that would be.
Well, Cat, 7 times 17.
Oh, I don't know what that is, but
Well,
7
times 7 is 49.
4.
And 7
7
times
and
0
4
is 70.
is 11.
So
That's 114?
yeah, something like that.
Something like 100. Wow. Let's see how that did. Okay, George. Well, I've asked you to tell us actually, a little bit of your life history, or however you want to do it, and then you can share anything you want to share. Really,
Okay.
I mean, it's however you want to do it. You and Maybell there.
Well, Ross, I have shared with you some of my life history.
Yes.
I like to talk about my family and what influence they've had on my life and the church has had on my life. Because my journey started at birth, of course, and I have received a statement about me on my 1950 yearbook.
Oh.
And it's underlined a heavenly smile. And
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I think I inherited that from my father because he had a great smile. He was a happy man. And my grandfather was a happy man. And so I look at them, beginning with my grandfather, he was my hero. I wanted to be more than anything like my grandfather was.
And what was his name?
John Walter Maddox.
Uh-huh.
And Dr. John Walter Maddox.
A medical doctor?
He was a sanopractor, chiropractor, and naturopath.
Huh.
All in one.
Wow.
He was studying to be a osteopath. But he got glaucoma and he couldn't finish the surgery, couldn't do the surgery.
Right.
And consequently, he qualified with his knowledge and degree of study to be a chiropractor and so on.
Now, where was this?
This was, he studied in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, okay.
And moved to Kirkland, Washington. And that's where my father and my mother met.
Okay.
In church.
Churches of Christ?
Yes.
Okay. Thought so.
Both lines. My dad grew up, started in Oklahoma, born 1903, and my mother was born 1903.
And what was your mom's name?
Mabel McCormick.
Okay.
So we have that history, and we have the family history. Grandfather went to school at Nashville Bible School.
Oh.
And he preached as a tent meeting preacher in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where there were 5 churches in all that were situated on places where he pitched his tent. So, and St. Elmo's is one of them.
Oh.
In Chattanooga.
Yes, I met the preacher there that's there now, young guy.
I see.
Go ahead, though.
And so they were so very, very influential that And I loved my grandfather, and decided, he announced one Sunday, that he was going to start a Bible study on how to be a teacher. We were in Seattle at the time, and the Green Lake Church of Christ in Seattle. Louis T. Oldham was the preacher, and he was very eloquent. So I had this love of listening to them. And I wanted to be like them. So I attended those classes, and I was told without any hesitation whatsoever from my grandfather, okay, George, you have decided you're going to be this class, and you're going to do exactly everything everybody else does. And you're not going to have any favors. So that was the start of fulfilling my dream.
And you were about how old then?
4
4.
years old. I walked and I ran, and I walked and I ran from our home to Green Lake. Would be probably about 1.5 miles. So you never know what will influence a person and make their life be what it was.
True.
But my father was a carpenter, and so I learned to be a carpenter. I worked with him from the time I was 7 years old. And before electric hand saws came out.
Ooh.
Power saws.
Yeah, so you're doing...
And so I did it from that time. And we lived on a little farm, a 1/4 acre, and had chickens, and goats, 2 goats, and a cow, and a garden, big garden. And that was that was from 6 to 12. I mean, from 6 to 12. Then my father decided he wanted to go to school, and he wanted us to have, my brother and I, have a Christian education. So we moved from Seattle, Washington to Abilene, Texas. And we had a Llewellyn setter dog, and that dog moved with us. On the way, the dog had 12 pups. No, 11 pups.
Okay.
But we got to Abilene, and we didn't have any pups left. We would stop at a gas station or something, and somebody would take a look at those pups, and that is a beautiful pup. And so they just were left along the way in the hands of good people.
Strode out from Washington down to Abilene.
All the way. 1937 Graham Cavalier.
Oh.
And I attended Abilene Christian High School, grade school, the last 2 years, and high school, and 3.5 years of college. Did not complete it.
Oh.
So.
And did you have an engineering degree?
I did not.
What were you going for in those 3.5 years of college?
I was going for a ministry.
Okay.
A science degree.
Okay.
Which you could do and get your ministry degree.
I see.
So They didn't have a ministry degrees as such
Okay,
in particular.
I see.
But I had a good class, and I had good teachers all the way from grade school, finishing grade school, 7th grade to 3.5 years of college. So a great time. Congregation we attended was 14th and Vine in Abilene, and Paul Southern was our preacher, and he was very eloquent. And I was 17 when I was asked, when I was a senior in high school, I was asked to deliver a 10-minute lesson along with 2 seniors in college. And
When were you baptized in all this?
I was baptized when I was 8
8.
years old.
Wow.
And there was no question about it. Nobody objected. I actually did as well in that Bible study as anyone else in that Bible study, which I don't know. It's been kind of an amazing journey in my life, and I've treasured it. Experiences along the way, preaching that I wouldn't trade for anything, and experience I've had along the way in engineering. We ran out of carpenter work in Seattle, and I hadn't found a place to preach yet. So I went down to Boeing because they were having a
So now you came back from Abilene back to
Seattle.
to
Yes,
Seattle.
because
Okay.
my parents
So would
had
you be in
moved
the
back
20,
here.
19, would you be around 20 years old or in that?
I was 21, I believe,
Okay. When you went back to Seattle?
when I moved back to
Okay,
Seattle.
I see.
That would be
Somewhere in that early 20s.
in that.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Yes. So the Boeing was advertising for model makers. And I figured with the carpenter work experience I had, and that my father and I had done cabinet work together, and so then I had enough experience, and I did rate as a journeyman carpenter, that I would not have any problem being a model maker. But they had filled all the openings they had. The person at the desk said, well, we have a opening for drafter trainees. If you would like to be one, and if you get over 70 or above, you can be in the school.
So there's a test that you would take.
That was on the test I would take.
Yeah.
And so I took the test and scored 71.
Okay.
And I hadn't had any previous drafting training or mechanical drawing. And I was, when I graduated from that, which was equivalent to 2 years of pre-engineering at the University of Washington. I mean, it was all the things necessary,
Yeah.
which I can't say how fortunate I feel like I have been, because things have just happened right. And I was put in the flight test engineering group when I left the training school. Sat down at the drafting tables, and my lead engineer came up to me with a sketch of what he wanted me to put on paper. And I looked at it, and I looked at the drawings of the surrounding
There was artwork
area.
nearby, like on the wall you're talking about that you looked at? Or?
I looked at plans,
Yeah, okay.
at the plans of the structure,
Okay.
and what was nearby. And there were several places where this particular structure would be. It was designed to hold a thermocouple and take the temperature in that area. And so I looked at it, and I studied the area, and I made a sketch, went back to my lead engineer and said, I have no objection to the what you've done, but I think that this would be a little easier to do and actually be better. And he looked at it, and he looked at me, and then he looked back at the drawing I'd made, and he said, well, George, you just go ahead and do it. And if it works, I get the credit, and if it doesn't, you get the blame. And it was, it was the situation that I got to do that, and the next thing he wanted to have done, he came with me, to me, told me what he wanted done, and gave me the water line, butt line, and station line, and said, I don't have a time to draw a sketch for all of these drafters here that I have to be lead over. But I would appreciate it if you could just go ahead and decide what to do and draw it. And if I see that it's right, we'll do it that way. If it works, I get the credit. And if it doesn't, you get the blame. And
That's good.
we had a great relationship with each other. In fact, Bob and I played chess at every noon hour after that.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
So Bob was your lead
Bob,
engineer
yes.
at that point?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the department head came up to me one day and said, George, I'm going out to the airplane to do continuity check. This was all electronic testing equipment. And I wondered if you would like to go with me. And I said, sure. And so I went out with him, and a little while later he said, I'd like to have you work on the airplane as the engineer in charge of instrumentation equipment going on the airplane and on the off the airplane, and the test results. So that was,
wow.
So I spent the next 4 years as a engineering aide, from being a drafter. I was only engineering aide on the flight line.
Well,
So
so how long you did the drafting part before you went into the engineering?
half a year.
Oh, really? Goodness. You must have been gifted in that area.
I think that I had so much training from my father that I could look at something and see what had to be done. I mean, I could, it's structure is structure. And whether it's wood or whether it is metal, it's a matter of strength that you have to have, and that's all. And where the location and the size that it has to be according to the location, and what it has to carry. So it wasn't hard to figure out, and the instrumentation wasn't hard to do. It was just really a matter of management and telling the plumber and electrician and mechanic what we wanted done, and if they had any questions to answer them. So it wasn't very long till I asked my lead if I could have my car on the field. And I was allowed to have my car on the field, which was a 1951 Studebaker Starlight coupe. And, I just, when the radio car and lined up on one side of the airplane and I lined up on the other side of the car, the airplane, and the airplane wound up the engine and took off. The two of us took off right alongside.
I see.
And that was every flight from that time on.
What was your purpose in going alongside of it? I know why the radio car might be there. Why was your vehicle?
Because the mechanic and the electrician and the plumber wanted to go with me.
Oh.
And it was kind of a test.
Sort of a maiden voyage kind of thing?
It was a kind of a thing where we had a little thing going of who could win the quarter mile.
I see. Oh. I see.
It's, So I had a concert, and we'll talk about ministry. I wanted to be a preacher, and we had a church that wanted to be started in Federal Way, Washington. And so I went out there along with other volunteers, and we rotated preaching for, I guess it was about 6 months.
So you did church planning at that point.
And so I became the first preacher with that congregation. And we met in a rented hall with wooden chairs. The only problem I ever had with that at that congregation was Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker was a little boy.
Oh.
And if I didn't get started before he did, forget it.
I thought you meant the other kind of Johnny Walker.
No,
that Johnny Walker.
He was a little boy. And we, he would just set up a ruckus.
I see.
But if I got started before he did, he went to sleep.
I see. Well, good.
And
so So your goal was to put people asleep? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, my goal was to keep all of the adults awake and all
Okay.
of the
And put
kids
him to
asleep.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
All of the little ones.
Yes.
And so it had an effect because there's a certain tone and a certain voice level you have to meet, and a certain reaction that you have to have from the audience.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure it was which made me able to do the preaching that I've done, whether it was that experience, but that was the start.
Contributed for sure.
It contributed. It was part of it. And I had a cousin. His family lived in Sandpoint, Idaho. And I would go out and visit my cousins when I could. And I was out one particular weekend, and Nan and Henry, when I arrived, I found out that Nan and Henry were having a Bible class study with a family in Sandpoint, and I went with them. And Henry asked me to lead the class. They had the husband would not sit in the class. He would sit behind the door in the living room. Mm-hmm. We sat around the dining room table.
But he could still hear it, I bet.
He could hear it.
Yeah.
And I guess we had been there talking and sharing the message that was for that particular period. And he came to the door and he said, "That sounds really interesting. Can I come in?"
Oh, goodness.
And this man weighed 657 pounds.
Wow.
Stood 6'7" tall.
Mm.
An impressive person.
Yeah.
He was a part of the road crew when they were doing road work.
Mm-hmm.
And he was name was Dick Van Rossen. 6 months later, I got a phone call from Cousin Henry, and he said, "George, I want you to come over. Dick Van Rossen wants to be baptized."
Oh.
He and his family.
Wow.
All of them.
Wow.
And I think there were 5 in all.
Hmm.
And so...
And he weighed 600 pounds.
657 pounds.
All right.
And the only place big enough to baptize him was Lake Pend Oreille.
Hmm.
There wasn't a baptistry in the area that would hold 2 people, one my size and one his.
Right.
So we went to Lake Pend Oreille, and Dick Van Rossen and I waded out into water deep enough to baptize him. And I said, "Dick, there's no way I'm going to lay you over like I would normally baptize a person. So I will want you to duck down under the water, and I'll hold you down, and then help you back up."
Mm-hmm.
So he was the heaviest And I think the next one must have been about 220.
Mm-hmm.
And I baptized that family.
Mm.
And it's one of the great experiences I had in my life.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
And my wife was a member, she was a member of the church in Seattle, in Central Church of Christ in Seattle. And I went to a youth meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and I decided I would leave the Green Lake Church of Christ and go to Central.
Mm-hmm. For obvious reasons.
And yes, I found that there was a young lady there that looked mighty attractive.
Mm-hmm.
And
so what was
so
her name?
her name was Claudia Ellen Venable.
Hmm.
And Claudia and I got married before I spoke at the Federal Way Church.
Mm-hmm.
So
Hmm.
we the legal marriage lasted for 35 years.
Oh.
And we lived together for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was going between preaching when I couldn't get an engineering job,
Mm-hmm.
and engineering when I couldn't get a preaching job.
Mm-hmm.
But I preached for 20 churches.
Wow. Mostly in the Washington area?
Most, well, as far away as Chicago.
Okay.
The Chicago area was more part-time and fill-in work.
Hmm.
I went there and started preaching at the Brookfield Church of Christ in Chicago, and I was there for almost 2 years, and then I was I got a job preaching at the Elk Grove Village Church of Christ near O'Hare Airport.
Mm-hmm.
And they really couldn't afford to support someone. And I was able to get a job at Western Electric, and where I worked for 5 years.
Hmm.
And I became I became an engineering, and I went in as an engineering associate and came out as a development engineer.
Hmm. That's good.
So I was, I'd been there a year, I'd been there 6 months when I was transferred from circuit pack test and repair group to the manufacturing of memory cards group. And I was one, my boss told me that his boss told him to bring me over and give me 6 months of training underneath the man who was the engineer, and then turn this job of engineering for that program,
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing program,
Mm-hmm.
and then after 6 months, he'll be the engineer in charge, and you will do whatever he asks you to do.
Mm-hmm.
It was an unusual situation.
It sounds like it was.
But Dick Vidmar and I got along extremely well. And
So-
I had they had a program where you could go, if you had an idea that would make an improvement in the shop that you were working with, or any other shop that you happened to see something that could be improved, you would have the opportunity to write up a description and what you could accomplish and how much it would cost.
Was there a little box for you to put that in? Or?
You would give it to your lead engineer,
Okay.
and the lead engineer would give it to the assistant manager, and it would go up to the manager, and then they would have a meeting of the managers, board of managers, and you would have the opportunity of 3 minutes to explain your idea and what it would cost and how long it would take. And that was every 2 weeks. I met with the Board of Engineers 13 consecutive meetings. And then 14th meeting, I didn't go because I'd finished all my
Explanation.
Yes. Then after you finished your explanations, you, design.
Your formal presentation of what your idea was.
And then when you finished it, you would be given the opportunity to go before the Board of Managers and tell them what you had accomplished and how much it cost. And so I had another 13 consecutive weeks before the Board of Managers.
Huh. Wow.
So I set some kind of a record.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
About it.
The reason I was asking about a little box, I've got this little box but I think this was maybe a Second World War era wooden box that's suggestions at a airplane manufacturing company that I don't know what, I think I got it at a yard sale, but it's got the name, I can't remember the name of the company though, if it's Boeing or what, but it was something well known. That's why I got it. I thought, well, I'm gonna get that, and wasn't even hardly anything. But anyway, I sidetracked you here. Go ahead and continue
Well, after working at Western Electric, I alternated between preaching and engineering. I became a contract engineer, and there was a magazine called Engineering Weekly, which would have a list of job openings, and I would apply where I felt I could get a job. And so I traveled, my wife and I traveled, and my two daughters. Melinda was born in Seattle.
Okay.
And
yeah, I've met her, I believe.
And Katie, my youngest daughter, was born in Illinois. When we were at Federal at Elk Grove Village. And I also after speaking at Elk Grove Village, I attended services at the Naperville Church of Christ in Naperville, Illinois, which was outside of Chicago. And I spoke on occasion. Dale Smith was our preacher, but he only spoke on Sunday morning because he was the full-time preacher at West Chicago.
Oh.
I became a deacon at Naperville, and altogether we lived.
As far as I know, we did. Go ahead. Let's see, I was going to ask you a couple questions I had. One of them is, now you said a minute ago 20 congregations. You're talking about over your lifetime. Is that right? When you said 20 congregations?
10 congregations full-time and 10 congregations part-time.
Okay, wow, that's great. And everywhere from Washington down to
California,
okay, yeah.
Illinois,
yeah.
Montreal.
Oh, really?
I spoke every third Sunday there. Texas. That was Grand Prairie. I preached at Fairfield, California, Sacramento, and it was another small congregation. I don't remember, but and I couldn't tell you all of the congregations I've preached at, but
And that you filled in for probably
and
quite a few.
altogether during the 30 years that Claudia and I lived together, we lived in 35 houses.
Wow.
So
you did move around quite a bit then.
yes, I had moved with Boeing to Florida, Fort Walton Beach, Florida.
Yeah, I know where it is. We used to live near there.
And I preached for 9 months with the congregation at Wright, Florida,
I know
just
where Wright is.
outside. Huh?
Yes, I know where Wright is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, that's right there outside Fort Walton.
And
It's kind of a little community. You used to have to go straight through it to get to Fort Walton. But I know what you're talking about, yes.
and I worked at the Eglin Air Force Base.
I've been there
So,
on base there.
okay, on
Yeah,
base. Okay.
Yeah, not because I'm military, but my father-in-law had worked on the base there in the warehouse for many, many years. He was in the military back in World War II, but then he did civilian work on the base there for the rest of his career, really, and then retired and lived there. So we used to go down and visit him, and he'd take me on base at Eglin Field, where General Doolittle from the Second World War fame was on one of the buildings.
Well, I was engineer, flight test engineer,
Down there,
as an engineering aide at
in
Eglin Air Force Base
Yeah.
on the B-52 Hound Dog missile program. So,
goodness. So you probably know where Crestview is, maybe. Crestview, Florida, and you would know where Niceville is.
oh yes,
And where Valparaiso is, which is, you enter Valparaiso just before you get to Eglin Base. That's where Joe and Sally, my mom-in-law, and her husband lived, is Valparaiso, right there outside Eglin.
well, when we moved, my family and I, Dad, Mom, and Dick, my brother, moved to Abilene. The first Christmas we had was spent in Florida at my aunt and uncle's. My great aunt and uncle. So home, which was the campus of the Golf Park College for Women, which Richard G. Cox, my uncle, and Elizabeth Maddox, no, Elizabeth Maddox Cox was his wife, and she was the dean of the college.
Hmm.
He and she built that college.
Was that in Fort Walton?
That was in Gulfport,
Yeah.
Mississippi.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And so that was my first experience in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a grand
Mm-hmm.
place.
Yes.
And I was greeted to high society. I mean, with the home with the butler and the maid.
Oh.
And the butler and maid were two black people that my aunt and uncle adopted as their children.
Oh, really?
Really.
Goodness.
And raised them.
How about that?
So.
Gulfport.
And you never saw any people so close.
That's good. So what brought you to Dalton?
Alicia.
Okay. And so where did y'all meet?
We met online.
Okay. And this was how long ago?
It was
20 years ago?
23 years ago
Okay.
now.
Yeah.
Actually, more than that, a little bit.
That was right before we started doing mediation, I think, now that I think
Yes.
about it.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And, well, she was a member of the Episcopal Church on the...
Oh, she was part of the leadership
yes, she was.
in the Episcopal Church, yeah.
Right.
And her husband at the
Part
time...
of the vestry.
Yeah, yeah.
And her husband's a lawyer.
Lawyer, yes. I've met him.
Hugh.
It's been a while. Hugh, I couldn't think of his name. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I remember him.
And so that was her ex-husband.
Mm-hmm.
And
So you moved to Dalton. This is
so
where she was.
after we got married, we moved to be in her home.
Okay, that's good.
And
Wait, were you gonna say something else?
oh,
Now lately you've been feeling kind of puny, and so tell us a little bit about that.
well, I just had. It's kind of interesting that you, because we were at the doctor's office, who has one of the people that has the pain clinic part of Hamilton.
Okay.
And so I went through an interview with him and Alicia present. And what he said was, he showed me a picture of the MRI and what I looked like. And there were black spots all the way from my tailbone all the way up to my neck.
I see.
So the cancer was really spread.
Mm-hmm. And you didn't have much discomfort before then?
No, I've not had much, more than one day of real discomfort.
Goodness. And so you were there, you had some pain, that's why you were there. So
I have a very high tolerance for pain.
Okay, I see.
And which can be dangerous, by the way.
That's true. Because
And,
pain indicates you got a problem, you're supposed to follow up with it.
and so what he said, I want to show you a picture. And he showed me the picture of that, and black spots were there on both sides of my, spine, up and down. And he said, I'm amazed I expected you to be in a wheelchair. From looking at these pictures.
These spots, yes, because it should have affected your
It should
spinal
have,
cord
yeah.
to the point you couldn't walk very much, apparently. Yeah, okay.
And here you are. And I don't have to use a walker, and I don't have to use a cane.
Yeah. That's great. Praise the Lord on that.
So, all I do,
And how long ago was this? That you went to the doctor and found these?
was,
Has that been a year?
no, that was September, sometime in September.
Okay.
When it started, I found out and started the things that we
6
had
months
to
ago, about. Yeah.
do.
Okay.
Well, it's more like 4.
4. Okay.
And
Yeah.
so he said, well, how are you doing now? And I said, well, do you want to see? He says, yes. And so I stood up without the aid of anything
Yeah.
from the chair and sat back down. He looked at me. He said, you're a miracle. But Ross, I felt like a miracle pretty much all my life.
Yeah.
And I mean, from the time that I was born until one day Claudia and I were at a stoplight in Sandpoint, Idaho, and a double rainbow came. And a bright part on the front and the less bright on the rear. It just encompassed the car. Most amazing, beautiful thing that I ever had happen in my life.
Double rainbow.
Double rainbow.
Wow, that's exceptional.
Double blessed.
Yeah.
And I have 2 children.
Double
Double
children.
blessed.
Very
And I've had, now I'm his second wife.
Yeah.
Double blessed.
Well, that's good.
And really, if they would allow me, I would be very happy to fill in here while a transition is taking place, because I know, Steve and I have talked.
Good. So, what's the status now then? You saw those x-rays and...
There's nothing more they can do for me except for me to take the medication I'm taking.
Okay.
I'm pretty much free,
Okay.
except for checkups.
But you don't seem to be too worried about it.
I'm not. I haven't been worried about it.
Right.
I don't, at my age, why worry? Just,
89.
they've, I don't know how much longer I've got,
Yeah.
but who does?
Right. Exactly.
Really?
No, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, that was true when I was 4. I could have been killed crossing the
That's true.
street.
That's true.
And so, why worry?
Exactly.
I mean, I could have killed myself just driving a car.
That's true.
Because when I was out on the road by myself, driving down the highway, I pretty much did the limits. And I had a Ford Taurus show that would do 175.
Oh. So you said do the limits. You're not talking about speed limits.
I'm
You're
talking
the
about,
limitations of the vehicle itself.
well, yes.
You drove fast, you're saying.
Well, yes, when I was out on open
highway,
highway and
yeah.
there wasn't anything around me for miles. I mean, like driving through New Mexico and Arizona.
Yeah.
And
Huh.
I did, at 145, I decided that that was enough. I didn't really need to drive that particular car anymore. There was so much throttle there that I just didn't want to do it.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, it was a powerful engine.
Is there any? What would you, if you were going to give some wisdom to younger preachers? What would be a few pieces of advice you might give to younger preachers?
Learn how to engage your audience. Too much is too much. 3 to 5 passages of Scripture are your outline. Details are too much, and they cause the members, the people that are listening, to disengage. Don't be a prancer and dancer. That every time you turn your eyes away from the audience, you have lost half your audience from one side of the podium to the other. So make yourself comfortable in the pulpit. Be comfortable in your pulpit. Learn how to read what your listeners are thinking.
Yeah.
You're good at it.
Thank you.
I know that.
I didn't know I was, but anyway.
Well,
thank
you are. I've
Anything else on the advice piece for young people or young preachers, either one?
young people, just learn to listen. Learn to listen wherever you are. Learn to hear what is being said around you without reacting to it. You don't have to be a part of it. But it's fun to listen to it.
It is, yeah.
And this is what I learned from my dad and from my grandfather.
I see. So you pass it on to the next generation then?
Well, I would like to. I mean, I like to. I've been able to pass that on to my youngest daughter and my oldest daughter. They're both very good at what they do. I mean,
do you have a favorite scripture?
your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit.
Okay. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 3 or 6, or both of
Something
them
like
have that, but I forgot which one's which. But anyway, okay. Any other that you can think of?
The Lord is my shepherd.
That is a good one.
I shall not want.
Anything else scripture-wise? How about your favorite song? Or songs?
When upon life's billows.
Yes. You are tempest tossed. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a good one. Any other favorite? Or meaningful?
I know the Lord will find a way for me.
That's a good one too.
And
are there any sayings that you found yourself repeating or enjoying? A saying.
I know. Not really.
There's what I mean by saying Jerry Barber, although he says he doesn't remember saying it, but I remember Jerry Barber. He used to be the preacher at Central a bunch of years ago, 30-something years ago. I thought he said, people don't do necessarily what you expect, but they will more likely do what you inspect. And so that's a saying. So I didn't know if you had a saying that. There's another one. I don't use it a whole lot, but I like it. When everything's said and done, there'll be more said than done.
Oh.
Well, anything else you'd like to share? Because again, this is editable, so.
Well,
Now you shared quite a few things, but is there any favorite childhood memories? You shared some already with your grandfather and such, but just
well, I will. One of my favorite things was one day, my brother, who was 4 years older than me, asked my dad to fix his bicycle, if he could fix his bicycle. And Dad said, as soon as I have time to do it, pretty much. And that was in the evening, just before dark. And so I went out to the garage, and it was the brake that he wanted fixed.
The handbrake or
No,
foot brake?
the actual brake.
Yes, where the brake's in the
rear.
axle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I went out into the garage, and I took the bicycle, and I took the wheel off, and I took the brake apart. I took a gunny sack and laid it down on the floor of the garage, and I cleaned the brake parts.
You took it apart, unscrewed everything, and took it apart.
I unscrewed everything, and I took it apart in order and laid it piece by piece.
Yes, because there's an axle, there's nuts, and there's
down the
roller bearings and such.
in order.
Yeah.
On the gunny sack. And I was packing. I was greasing, making sure everything had plenty of grease. Packing grease. And my brother came out and saw me with his bicycle.
All apart.
And he ran crying to Dad. He's 11 and I'm 7.
Okay.
And Dad came out with Dick, and he said, George, do you think you can fix this bicycle? I can if you let me. Just leave and let me do it. So I finished, went into the house and said, okay, it's fixed. Dick went to the garage, got on the bicycle, rode it down the street and back, and he came in the house and he said, Dad, George fixed my bicycle. It works better than it ever has.
Oh, goodness. So that's the first hint toward engineering, I would guess. Or one of the first hints.
No, I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, I built houses with Dad. Dad and I put a dormer in a house that we lived in after we moved from the city to just outside the city line, 3 blocks.
Oh, that's good.
And so that is probably my favorite story about myself.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
my relationship with my brother, we became best friends. And if anybody had in any way ever tried to hurt me, they were in very, very bad shape afterwards. So nobody ever tried.
That's good.
So
Right.
and we went on trips together.
Oh,
I mean, we shared in Medicare sales, policy sales. We drove out together and met the clients. I figured the cost, and he made the speech.
good. Teamwork there. That's good.
Oh my goodness. He wanted me to become a deputy U.S. Marshal like he was.
Oh, I was going to ask you what he did.
Well, he also was a ward attendant at a hospital in Washington State, in Walla Walla, I believe it, Walla Walla, Washington.
Walla Walla, Washington.
And Washington State Hospital. And he was doing undercover work because they were selling drugs. There were people selling drugs.
Goodness. Even
That's
back
part
then.
of it, yeah.
Wow.
And we went on one trip together. I was in Morse Avenue. He stayed there, you know, he would come in and stay there for a while when he knew something was coming up. And this is when Squeaky Fromm pointed the gun at Gerald Ford's head,
Oh,
and the gal bounced a .367 Magnum slug off the pavement over his head in L.A. I mean, in San Francisco.
huh.
And Patty Hearst was still with that group that he was
Yes.
with.
Yes. Huh.
He was the source of the information that where the authorities were able to come and get her, because he found out where she was.
Yeah,
And
Patty Hearst and
he was part of the Marshall's people who rounded up people who might cause, you know, want to kill the president.
yeah. Huh.
So
Wow.
he was quite a guy.
Sounds like it.
And he weighed in over 400 pounds because he had a disease that caused weight gain and weight loss.
Wow.
Right now, it's not coming to mind just what it was, but
Right.
anyway.
Well,
Just, you know, talk about my brother. I was sick one Sunday at Morse Avenue in Sacramento, and Dick was at the house, and I said, Dick, you're going to have to take my place this morning. Okay. If he'd have been free, I might have lost my job. I mean, Claudia and Melinda and
Huh.
that was something else again.
Sure. Well, thank you for your
Anyway.
time this afternoon, George.
Oh, thank you for coming over.
Yeah. You and
And,
Lulabelle, is that right?
Maybell.
Maybell. Yeah.
Maybell.
Your cat Maybell, who's asleep right now. So.
Yeah, we had Junebug and Maybell.
Oh, the
Before
pretty kitty.
we
Yeah,
had-
it's like our mama kitty.
Yeah, we had them beginning after I had been together 5 years, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
All righty then. We'll just